Alright guys, this is part 2 talking about texturing a person in 3D using Mudbox and Photoshop. I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks that you can do to actually get rolling. Now I showed you how you can project like a picture of someone, and I showed you how to load that in there, and you'll be using stencil and projection. Also keep in mind when you use your paintbrush you can lower the strength of it. So if I just wanted to subtly put a tan color on this guy, I can do that. I have it set to like 23, so it'll barely read through. The stronger you go, if we go a little bit higher here, you'll see that the color will come in a little bit stronger. Now again, I'm just using my simple stamp in here. Now you'll notice it's nothing really to write home about, but we can mute that out if we need to. It's just using the pattern and using the color here. We also can control the size as well as the mirroring options here, in which we all covered that before. So let me go back. Let me deselect that for a second. Have that off. Let me go into Control Z for a second and get that texture off my model, if it does work. I have a little bit of Wacom driver issues today. We'll just turn it off. There we go. Didn't want to turn off at all. So we'll go in here to call this base. In here you can also use the 3 different red, green, and blue channels, which I showed you in Photoshop last time. And you can paint in areas that you know there's going to be those colors coming through. So in this case, we'll keep that whole skin pattern. This is the stencil that's loaded in Mudbox by default, called Fleshy. And we can change to a more warmer color that we see like red coming through. We can say done there. That's the color that I've chosen. And I can put my strength maybe about 30 or so. And just kind of mute it out a little bit. You can also, if you wanted to, even change your opacity in Mudbox right here. If you don't want to destroy some of your painting, you can also create a layer mask and use black and white, which we'll talk about in Photoshop. The same principle works here, except for some of the selection options that you might get typically in Photoshop. You won't get them in Mudbox. So I'll go in here and I can paint this out a little bit. And I can even lower that a little bit here, so we can lower the strength of that brush. And if we want to, we can even mute the opacity. Notice that it's a little bit lighter than it was. I know you didn't see it much before, but we can go in here and we can paint where we see the red areas would show up on my character. Now I can even go even lower than that if I wanted to. Let's go to like, let's try 2. That's probably not going to be super different, but it'll be definitely significant. You can kind of tell. Okay, see? So I have to paint twice as hard, you notice. That's pretty much what that strength does. And I have this on random so that every time I paint, it rotates my brush, which you saw me talk about when it comes to jitter. And I can paint these areas where I would see that he would maybe have some red regions going on. And I can lower the opacity on that too if I wanted. So I can get those things that just subtly show up and look like I'm putting makeup on my dude, but I'm really not. I'm just trying to get that stuff to come through. And you can also do the same thing for blues. So we can make even another layer or work on the same layer so that we have the same type of opacity. It's up to you. I like to work in different layers because if I need to change anything, I can. So I can make this one a little more blue and make this a little more kind of right there, a little more blue in this color. I could even probably make it a little bit darker, but in this case we'll keep it that kind of a dark baby blue. And I can go in here and just make a new layer, because this is what I like to do in this one. And again, you can keep it all in one layer if you want to. I'm going to change his opacity also to 39, and I can literally punch that in if I want to too. So pretty much is 3D Photoshop. That's why I like this tool. And I'll go in here and I can paint in where I would see the blue come in on my character. And you got to be careful with this. If you do too much, your character can end up looking like he's a zombie. And then as we have these together, if you want, say you're ready to make this look a little bit more believable because you can see it's sectioned off, kind of looks like a red island in the blue ocean, we can actually flatten these if you wanted to. And again, sometimes I like to have these guys be all at once. I like to have these guys separate, but eventually, you might want to make them all one. Merge visible. And with them merged, we can now go in here and go to blur. We can use the same type of stamp and do randomize, so it shifts. Open up my brush a little bit, and I can now blur these a little bit here, so it's a little more believable with my color as you go. Now it's going to be red, green, and blue, and the green is probably going to be the less of it if you want your guy to look more human, so just keep that in mind. So I just thought I'd show you some quick little tips, a little more three-dimensional compared to what we had before. You can also, not only can you send things out to PSD, which you saw me do before I exported channel to PSD, but you can also do this. I showed this in one of my classes, but I didn't demonstrate it in video. I can export my screen to PSD. What it does, it takes a snapshot of my actual screen, and I export it to PSD, and I can just call this, we'll put this into demos, which I have on my desktop. So you can find this. There he is. And we'll call this Mohawk. It'll bring him in, and I can go in here and paint on him here. So say I have a particular angle that I like, or maybe I want him to have a scar of some kind. I can do this, and I can I'll just put a little bit more kind of maybe a pinkish scar he's got going on here. Switch my brush, and I can even use brushes I don't normally have in Mudbox or don't have time to put them in. I can put like maybe a little bit of scar here. He's got some scarring here he doesn't want to tell anybody about. He's quite embarrassed about it. A really bad motorcycle accident. It's being stupid. Alright, so we got that there. Just real quick little dib-dabs I put in there. And from here, and you can also create a new layer if you want to. I just went straight on what we had. And then I'll hit save. You go back to Mudbox and you say re-import, and you'll see those scars show up. So it works pretty much like sending it out the door with the PSD, but it actually will take your screenshot, which is kind of nice. So I just want to show those to you guys real quick. But real quick, let's go to our Photoshop for a second. And see, we have two different textures in here, but we don't want to do destructive editing. I don't want to go in here and destroy anything on this guy. Like I could erase it, try to get him to blend, erase will be nice and smooth, or I could simply just make a layer mask, and instead of erasing, I just switch to maybe the black color, and with my layer mask selected, I can go in here and start painting into my particular area on my layer mask and put a color in there that I want. Now let's go and do paint instead of erase. And with this painting, you'll see that you'll actually remove that object without being destructive. I can actually blend it the way that I want. I can increase this up. I can switch to maybe one of my skin brushes I downloaded. I lose track. Where is that? I should need to rename some of my brushes here. They're kind of redonkulous. And I can go in here and just erase that. And I'm not really removing my texture, but I'm getting it to blend. So I'm getting two different skin textures to try to blend together, and using non-destructive editing by using this layer mask. And to do that, all I did was select that with a wand. So say we'll do another one. I'll just grab this again, edit. Well, actually, we'll just do a new selection, so it's a little less confusing for you. A little bit blah right there. We'll do that guy. We'll just edit, and we'll do copy, and go back to our deal here, and I'll do paste. And I'll move him up a little bit. With him there, I'm going to use the wand, select him, and click right here to my layer mask. With that layer mask selected, switch to paint. Now we're going to paint black, and then we can erase these parts of the skin without actually losing the paste I put in there. So I can get that to blend a little bit better. Look at that. So we can have different variants in our skin texture. So I just wanted to show you that real quick with a little bit of Mudbox tips. And that's about it for this video. And let me know if you guys have any questions. I try to answer them as much as possible. I do teach a lot of classes and run my company, so things get a little bit crazy sometimes. But do be patient with me. I'll do my best to help you guys out. That's it.